Hello and welcome to the garden. Well, today I'm going to start getting this area ready for some raspberry plants. So about a year ago I received 4 bundles of raspberry canes, and I've got 4 bays here, 4 different varieties, and sort of arranged in order of fruiting. So at this end the autumn fruiting, at the far end the earliest fruiting sort. If anything, that's the warmer end of the plot here. You might be able to see on the camera that I've got some canes come up down the other end. They're not that impressive. There are a few that didn't establish, and there are some that have only thrown up some pretty weak canes. Then there are others that are okay. I'm not too worried about those. They will establish okay. There's enough there to get that going. They will spread out quite a bit over the next few years, so they're probably okay. And I've got 2 bays here with nothing. Not a single cane came up. So one of these was Tulameen, and then at the end the autumn fruiting Joan J. Joan J came with, looked like great big root systems on. It's a vigorous variety, that, but not a single cane came up from both of these bundles, and that is wrong. I planted them as soon as they arrived, and I can't see any reason why these 2 would not establish at all. Bare root raspberries, they can be a little bit tricky to get established. Very often they come with just a stupid little bit of root on, and it's barely enough, in my view, to give them a good start. But these didn't have that problem. The only thing I can think of is that there was something wrong with their storage before I got them. So maybe they were lifted too early, maybe the roots were allowed to dry out. Whatever it was, these did not do a thing, whilst the other 2 bundles did. And the fact that the other 2 established, I suppose, reasonably well. Not great, but most of those have come up. These 2 didn't. That tells me that it's highly unlikely that this was anything that I've done, because otherwise I'd expect to see some sporadic problem throughout, not 2 bays empty and 2 with a reasonable number of canes. So I was sold a pile of dead sticks, and I went back to the nursery and said, look, these haven't come up. And well, the initial response was fine. He said, well, yeah, the plants are guaranteed, and we'll order up some replacements. Of course, you miss a year, because by the time you realise that the canes aren't growing, it's already too late to get replacements. The only problem was they insisted on me paying a delivery fee. A bundle of canes, what is it, about 15 quid, something like that. And they wanted, I can't remember, 11, 12 pounds delivery. And to be honest, that really annoyed me. Not because I can't pay 11 or 12 pounds for a delivery of raspberry canes, but just out of principle, because they'd sold me a load of rubbish, not only wasting a year of my time, but then charging me for replacements. I did not take kindly to that, I must confess. So I bought these from Ashridge Nurseries. I have used them before. My father's used them before quite a bit. He's bought quite a few fruit trees from there. My preferred nursery is Keeper's Nursery. I've bought quite a few bits from RV Roger as well. Never had any trouble with their stuff, and we've been happy with what we've bought from Ashridge in the past. Since I had this problem, I did look at some reviews online. I am not the only customer to have difficulties getting raspberry plants established, and I don't think I'm the only one slightly miffed at having to pay for a replacement. Now, I appreciate that plant guarantees, you know, where there's a possibility that the customer has done something silly, you buy a tree and then you don't look after it and it dies in its first season. Under those circumstances, I can see that perhaps charging for the delivery, it's not bad, because that kind of guarantee, it's almost like a goodwill guarantee, because it's very hard to establish that you've done nothing wrong and that it was a problem with the plant that was delivered. However, I don't think there's any doubt in this situation. I am certain that the problem here was with the 2 bundles of dead sticks that they delivered in place of live raspberries. And to be charged for delivery, well, that just annoyed me. And I don't think that is really appropriate. As a consumer, you do have certain rights, and the goods have got to be fit for purpose, and replacements, including delivery costs, ought to be at the supplier's cost, not the customer's. So I'm not that bothered about their guarantee. And interestingly, they stated that the replacement plants would not have any guarantee at all. Well, it's just nonsense. If you buy something, it's got to be fit for purpose. These were not. So I kind of objected to it, and it all escalated, and in the end they refunded the purchase price, and I will not, out of principle, use that company again. So I think it's all very silly but very annoying. Anyway, back to the business at hand. I had an order in with Keeper's Nursery for 1 replacement pear tree, and also another row of raspberries for the fruit cage, which I'm going to put along the back behind the camera here. And I mean, that's kind of a slightly shady spot there, but I'm going to put an autumn fruiting one, and that will probably give us our last crop of the year. So hopefully we get that nice succession here. And thankfully I already had that order in place, so I was able to add a couple more bundles of canes to replace these, and so they're coming from Keeper's Nursery, and I'm a lot more confident that they will establish. Before they do, I need to do a little bit of work here. I need to pull out the old dead sticks, I need to get these weeded, and then get some mulch on the ground. I'm not exactly sure when that order is going to arrive, but it could be within the next week or two. It all depends on the weather, of course, when they are digging their trees and preparing them for shipping. But I think it's likely to be in January, in which case I'm going to go ahead and get this ready, and well, you'll see it straight away, but then I will come back as soon as the canes arrive and get them planted in a few minutes' time. Well, there's a fair bit of weed in here, of course, because we haven't touched these all year. So good thing is this soil is quite light in here. We did prepare this fairly carefully. This was all sieved out. I've got small stone in here. I was going to say I don't have large stones, but 1 or 2 must have escaped. But these weeds will come out very easily. Just a bit of a tedious job. These will also come out easily. There we go. I mean, you can see this. You can see the larger roots are still intact, but no growth whatsoever. You can see that they weren't planted too deep. That can be a problem with raspberries. You really don't want to plant them too deeply. They're very shallow rooted. But just nothing from these. It's junk. I don't mind that. You know, these things happen from time to time. You get duff plants and duff seeds, but it's the loss of the year that is most annoying. You can't get that back. These will be a year behind. It's another year to wait before I get a crop off of them, and that is all very annoying. So I've weeded all 4 of those bays out now, and I've given the first 2 a good layer of organic matter. That was horse compost. These are right ready to plant up as soon as the replacement canes arrive. The other 2 at the end, they're going to have to wait for a few days because I've run out of compost. Got a delivery coming soon, and then I can give those maybe a little bit of feed, some fish blood and bone, and I will give those a good mulch around the canes, and that will set those up too for the rest of the year, and they should be quite happy there. Well, I really am a donut because I thought those raspberry canes would be along shortly after I prepared this bed. I was doing this in a bit of a hurry because I thought they were coming possibly the following week. Got my dates wrong. They did arrive exactly when the nursery said they would, and I was about 5 weeks adrift, something like that. Anyway, the fruit cage, the ex polytunnel frame, is now looking quite different. So when I filmed the preparation of this bed, there was no netting on here, there was no door. I've put up this admittedly rather Heath Robinson structure here, an arrangement of bamboo canes and some wires just to keep these raspberry canes under control, stop them flopping in the path. We don't have a huge amount of width here, and those raspberry canes, if they're flopping in the path, it'd just be a nightmare getting up and down here. So we have made quite a few changes. Now, ideally, if I was doing this properly, I would have dropped in a couple of big old posts at either end, possibly a couple of intermediate posts, and obviously brace them properly, and then I would put cross pieces on, and then I would run the wires at least 3 heights along the length of the raspberry planting here. Of course, I didn't have posts to hand, and I didn't have the time to do that, let's say, properly. So I just bodged something up for now. I had these wires on here already. These were part of the old polytunnel, and they were just crop supports. They run across at every frame position. I added these along the length, and that gave me something to strap these canes to. So actually this is pretty robust. There's nothing wrong with this. It's not like it's going to blow down or anything. And well, I dare say that's all this is going to have for some years. I don't know if or when I might get round to putting up something a little bit better. But it will do for now, that's for sure. Anyway, the canes arrived exactly when the nursery said they would, and in a previous video I healed them in because I wasn't ready for planting, or I didn't have time then to get them in the beds here. So I need to go and lift those with great care because they've actually got pretty long shoots on one variety, Joan J, that has really long shoots, 4 inches or so, and they are a little bit delicate when they're young like that. It would be very easy to break those off, and I really don't want to do that. To be honest, it's not ideal to get them in that state. I would have preferred that they be dormant, or those shoots just be very small buds just starting out. That would have been fine. Some of those are a lot further along than I would ideally like. I did ask the nursery about it, and it's simply, as I thought when I healed them in is simply the fact that it's been so mild this winter. Okay, we've had a few frosts, but we haven't had a proper hard winter. And the nursery is up in Kent, and yeah, it's been so mild that stuff is growing away a lot sooner than expected. It shouldn't be a problem so long as I'm careful, but it's not ideal having just healed those in, because even now young roots will be beginning to grow, and of course they get disturbed when you move them, so I should be as careful as I can. Anyway, let's go and lift some canes. Right, what am I looking for? That's Polka, that's going up the back. So I think I will start with these two, and I want to be really careful here. Just going to ease them back out. I didn't tread this soil down, so it's not compact here. I can free some of that very carefully. Now I want to get right under these. Right, so that's one bundle. And this is the Joan J, that's the one with all of the shoots on it. Yeah, there they are. Okay, that's not too bad. I will inevitably lose one or two, but just trying to be as careful as I can. Right. Some big old runners on there. Okay. Yeah, that looks fine. And of course, because I've healed these in, these roots don't need soaking. They are nice and wet. There's no problem with that. I can just go ahead and plant them. Right, so there's a tie wrap around the base of these. I will just cut through that, trying not to harm any of the shoots there. There we go. And now I just want to tease these apart. I'm having to be a lot more careful than I could otherwise reasonably get away with because of all the shoots. Wow, look at that. That's really not bad. There's a whole cluster of new shoots here. They look pretty good. I think I can get that planted without damaging any of those. Then I've got this long length of runner. Now that shoot there is a goner, and yeah, none of these shoots are any good. I don't think these would have made it through the transport, and in fact that one I can see it snapped off a long time ago, but nonetheless there are a couple of new ones on here, and there's this long length of runner. Now I want to put that probably straight down the middle of the line here, so I'm planting a double row down here. That works quite nicely. It's what we did in our previous fruit cage. Oops, there it goes. So I'll put one down there and one here, and I can run these roots down the lines, and they can fill in nicely. So that's a really good cane. And let's see, what else have I got? Well, they're always a mixed bag, of course. This is a scrappy looking bit of root. There is a little bit of the fibrous root here, but this is not nearly so impressive. But at least it's not a dead stick, because there are young shoots just coming here, so that one will be okay as well. This one is a big old fella. Where are you tangled up? Oh, yeah, so there's another root. Actually, that's been gone for a long time as well. I mean, you just can't ship them with these roots intact. But there are so many, actually. I say roots, I mean shoots, of course. There are so many here that it really doesn't matter. I only need 1 or 2 of these to come up. There's some new ones down the bottom. That's another nice looking cane. What I will do is spread any slightly worse examples in between some of these good ones. So, I mean, this will probably establish there's quite a bit of fibrous root there, and there is one new shoot coming off of a bit of that root. The old cane itself has no signs of life, so yeah, that one might not be quite so good. And this one is just ridiculous. Of course, until you split it, you really don't know what you've got. I assumed that half of these shoots were attached to some of these others, but no, this one is an absolute monster. So I think it would make sense to put let me put that monster right there, because in time I only need even a few of these to establish well, and the whole bed will be filled in due course. So if I spread these really good ones around, so something like that will be absolutely fine. Now, if you've got a silly little bit of root on them, something like that, it's very easy to come along and plant. You can stick your spade in the ground, give it a little bit of a wiggle and just drop it in. It's not a problem. These have quite a bit more root on, so I think I will be planting these using the trowel. Now, because I healed them in at an angle, I have covered the old soil mark, but raspberries are, generally speaking, pretty shallow rooted, and the last thing you want to do is go burying these deep. So I would say not much more than that. So these young shoots really at this stage are going to be just above the soil level here. I certainly can't sink it down like that. That would be far too deep for the raspberries. This only wants to be a couple of inches below the soil level, and planting too deep can be a cause of failure, so I certainly don't want to do that. There's some long runner here, and there are signs of life from that, so actually maybe I'll swap those two round. I can run that piece of runner straight along here, and yeah, that could work quite nicely. And then I will put one of the less impressive specimens alongside, maybe around about there. That will sit quite happily here, I think. So if I just judge the depth, it's a couple of inches there. You don't want more than that. And the same here, when that sits down, maybe just a little more out there. That will be fine. That will put the tops of these shoots above. Now, of course, these have been bundled up, so they are all white, but they will soon green up and straighten up. So, right. The only other thing I'm going to do is spread a little bit of mycorrhizal fungi. So this is not essential by any means. These organisms do exist in the soil, so it's not essential to add them, but potentially it can give a bit of a head start to the plants, and I do like to do it when planting trees and other stuff. So these fungi form a symbiotic relationship with the roots. Effectively, you get a bigger root system, and they're great at delivering nutrients and water to the host plant in exchange for some carbohydrates. So Seems like a good deal to me. I'm just going to sprinkle this stuff around the roots. Most of that will go down to the bottom of the trench here, but I want to make sure there is contact with the root system. Don't need a huge amount, that is plenty. Right, so I'm just going to put a little bit of soil here to hold this one in place. Because of the presence of these shoots, I'm not going to come in here stomping around. I will water these heavily in a moment, and that will be sufficient to wash the soil around the root system here. Got to be very careful with these shoots. There really is a crazy amount here. I really don't want to plant these any deeper here, because when I come along and mulch these, of course that's going to build up bit by bit the level of this soil, so I don't want to go over the top with that right now. This will all settle down nicely when I give it a good watering in a bit. Well, that's the first batch done, and next I'll lay out Tulameen. That's the latest of the summer fruiting sorts, and I'll probably come back when I set out Polka along the back fence there. That soil is not so nice. We've dug that over. We've got plenty of organic matter in it, but it hasn't been sieved, so that will be stony and heavy and a little bit unpleasant. This stuff is all nice in these beds here down the middle. I know I was being a little bit fussy there, but especially when they are already shooting, but I think anyway with raspberries they are a little bit tricky to get established, and I think maybe it's worth taking your time and being a little bit careful with it, making sure the height is appropriate and that nothing is damaged. Now of course there are one or two shoots that did not survive either the transport here or then lifting from the where I healed them in, but I think most of them are intact and hopefully they will grow away happily now in their new home. So I was just unpacking the Tulameen canes, and our experience has been that the autumn fruiting varieties tend to have much better root systems to them. These are not so impressive. There's a little bit of fibrous root here, but mostly these are they're just sticks, and well, there are a couple of little shoots on this stick and they may well establish, but it's not impressive. And I mean, this is part of the problem with getting raspberries established. Very often this is all you get, and to my mind that's really not a good way to start these plants off. Well, I shall plant them up and we will see what comes of them. Hopefully enough of them will get settled down. If I even had maybe 3 on each side nicely spaced out, if I was lucky and they were in good spots, that would be more than enough, because I am putting them reasonably close together here and they will spread out quite successfully after a few years. So Yeah, but still, it's not great. So I'm at the back of the fruit cage now, and this is our north fence. So this area gets a fair bit of shade. During the summer, of course, it will get a little bit of morning sun here and quite a bit of afternoon sun. So it's not completely in the dark. But lots of the berries actually can cope with a fair amount of shade. Now, of course, planting in full sun, you're going to get probably the best fruit and sweetest fruit and so on, but I don't really care. This lot along the back, this is to give us a late crop, and planting in a shadier spot, that should certainly have that effect. And in the old days, before there were lots of new varieties that came into season at different times, different plants would be very carefully located around a kitchen garden to help spread the harvest. And there are lots of things that can grow happily along the north border. So blackcurrants, for example, will grow happily here. And I think the raspberries will probably do okay. So this is another autumn fruiting sort. This is Polka, and we've not grown that one before, but heard good things about it. And once again, the autumn fruiting variety is definitely winning on the vigor of these roots. And see, these stems are pretty chunky here too. Now, they don't have quite as many shoots already underway as the Joan J, which is fine, but they do have some shoots there. They might just show up on the camera, and that means that these at least are not dead sticks, so that is great. It'll be quite a dense planting across the back here. You get them in bundles of 10 usually, sometimes bundles of 8, and I might as well stick them in. So again, I will space them so that I have the best looking ones more or less evenly in case some of the ropey looking ones fail to establish, but exactly the same job again otherwise. So that row along the back there is planted up, and hopefully they get established okay. Some of those had really great roots on them. Not as many shoots or young buds visible, but with a bit of luck, we'll have a thicket of raspberries along the back here. And I think, even though it's a slightly shady position, I think we should get some reasonable fruit, hopefully quite late in the season. It's good to spread the harvest. There's common practice on planting to cut back the old canes to just, I don't know, 6 inches or so. So that is what I'm going to do here. I'm not going to remove anything where there are shoots on it, but that is just a dead stick. But hopefully there's some life in the root system. Of course, these are not supposed to be growing this year. But yeah, I'll just go along and cut the canes back a little bit. And the final step is to give them a really good watering in. Set all of that soil around the roots there. There's no need to come in stomping around. I don't like that. Especially with this kind of plant, with the young shoots coming up. So my last little job is to give these raspberries a little bit of feed and then to mulch them. I was going to do this last time, but I actually ran out of compost, so I couldn't do it then. Now, I've got to be a little bit careful because there are 1 or 2 young shoots coming up in these beds, so I don't want to swamp them too much. And raspberries, of course, they're not really that greedy. They don't need a huge amount of feed, but this land here, it's a little bit poor, and it hasn't had a lot of compost on it compared with things like our veg beds and so on. So I would like to give these just a little bit of feed. They are still really only getting established. I mean, you can see this plant here, it's got 3 weedy short little bits of cane. It's okay, I can see a new shoot coming, well, 2 maybe. So I'm sure it'll be fine, but just to keep it happy. And then of course it is good to mulch it at least once a year, helps keep the weeds down, and of course keeps the soil in reasonable condition. So I'll just give this a little sprinkling of fish blood and bone. Right, so everything is done here now. All the raspberries are planted, the ones that went in last year, they're fed and mulched. And yeah, I don't have a lot to do here right now. I've got plenty of work to do elsewhere, but it is nice to get this job done. Anyway, that will be all for this video. Thanks ever so much for watching, and bye for now.